in their life, I have nothing but admiration. I don't recommend the second alternative. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that Latter-day Saint parents of gay and lesbian children want desperately for their children who do not find celibacy as a solution to their circumstance, desperately want those children to find a monogamous, committed relationship. The thing I want to say most in answer to your question, which is very complicated and which I have not addressed very well, is I would like to see my gay brothers and sisters, no matter what their circumstance, sitting next to me in sacrament. Someone else.
In my situation, I was told not to return to church.
Forgive me, sir, I didn't hear you.
I was told not to return to church. So as with I don't want to welcome this brother. I am not so they can have their children. I'm not
That's not the first time I've heard such a story, and I have to tell you, I agree.
There's transport.
Sir.
So at the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned that this was just to answer one of the three main questions that you posed at the beginning. Are there planned lectures for the other two questions, possibly, or?
Not to my knowledge. They are topics that need to be talked about. One of my hopes in coming tonight would be that we would overcome the reluctance in our community to talk about this issue. But we would adopt not just a civil discourse, but a discourse that recognizes the basic decency of all people, including our gay and lesbian brothers. Yes, ma'am.
So if homosexuality is like biological, what does it mean with other types of like sexual attraction? Like, does that mean like a pedophile is also biological?
The first thing to say is the evidence is very clear that pedophilia is not more common in the homosexual community than it is in the heterosexual community. Homosexual people are not pedophiles. Some are. Some heterosexuals are. They are not synonymous. There is a smaller body of evidence of which I am mostly ignorant that pedophilia also has a genetic component. I can't say any more than that because I'm ignorant. Sir?
I'm curious to know, scientifically, when I was an infant, before I spoke or walked, my father would leave for, ironically, church meetings. I would immediately develop a fever of about 102 degrees, and that would stay until we returned home. Are there studies about at what point the child is cognizant of the stress between a father and a son?
The question is about the timing of recognition of being different in children. What I know about this subject is that gay men and women looking back on their childhood almost universally identify some point in their childhood when they recognize some difference between themselves and other children. I don't think that that means that they had an intellectual understanding of what that difference was, nor did they associate it with romantic feelings. Sometimes this takes the form of a sense of just not belonging, sort of being on the margin of the groups. And sometimes it takes the form of recognition of childhood gender nonconformity. For some people, the point in time is very young. This is 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. I don't know that it's possible to cite an average age. But then, in later adolescence, this difference, as one struggles with sexual feelings, then gay people tend to associate the difference that they have self-diagnosed to be homosexuality. And then comes the nearly always the struggle to ask who really am I, and how am I going to live my life? Sir?
There are some people that identify as being bisexual, and if they identify as being bisexual, does that mean that the biological aspects that cause a man to be homosexual, or female or woman to be lesbian, is it the same factors that cause them to be just in the middle?
I think the question is are the same factors that we think are responsible for homosexuality also responsible for a person being bisexual? I just don't think there's enough information. There are disagreements about how many bisexual people are represented among non-heterosexuals. I do know that there are many therapists whose experience is that those people who can succeed in opposite orientation marriages tend to be bisexual. And with therapeutic help or counseling or by private force of will, are able to focus on one of the two orientations, the two sets of romantic feelings that they're capable of. I would remind everybody about the fact that gay and lesbian and bisexual people are a small proportion of the population, and finding samples of such people in sufficient quantity to make statistically valid comparisons is a daunting task. Yes, sir.
In doing my homework for coming tonight, I was looking up studies about this topic, and I found an overwhelming number of them cited early sexual trauma as being more prevalent among the gay and lesbian population than in the general population. You kind of touched on that a little bit in your lecture. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
The conventional wisdom for those who adopt this explanation is that if a young woman, if a young female child is sexually abused by a male, she will be